The sheriff's station went dead silent, the kind of silence that holds its breath before something shatters. Master Sergeant Caleb Stone stood at the front desk signing his final discharge papers. 22 years of service ending quietly on a frozen December night. Then the door exploded open. A barefoot child stumbled through ice crystals clinging to her hair. She ran straight to Caleb, wrapped her thin arms around his leg, and sobbed 3 words that would change everything. "She's coming, please." Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. And if this story moves you, subscribe and stay until the very end. You won't believe what happens next. Shadow moved before Caleb could think. The Belgian Malinois positioned his 90-pound frame between the trembling child and the door. A low growl rumbled from his chest. Not loud, not wild, but unmistakable. Caleb looked down at the girl clinging to his leg. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old. Blonde hair matted and wet. One mitten missing. Her pink jacket torn at the sleeve, revealing bruises. Yellow and purple. Shaped like adult fingers wrapped around a tiny wrist. "Hey," Caleb said softly, kneeling to her level. "Hey, look at me." The girl's eyes lifted. Blue. Enormous. Filled with the kind of fear Caleb had seen before. In war zones. In villages where children learned to hide before they learned to read. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Emma." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Her name is Emma, and she needs to come with me." The voice came from the doorway. Caleb's head snapped up. A woman stood there, badge glinting on her chest. Deputy Victoria Hayes, mid-30s, auburn hair pulled into a regulation bun, uniform pressed and perfect despite the weather, but Shadow's growl deepened. "Emma, honey?" Victoria said, her voice smooth as polished glass. "You can't just run off like that. You scared me half to death." Emma pressed harder against Caleb's leg. Her small body shook violently. "She's my foster daughter," Victoria continued, stepping inside. "She has issues, behavioral problems. She runs when she gets overwhelmed." Sheriff Marcus Webb emerged from the back office, coffee mug in hand. 63 years old, 30 years on the force. He stopped short when he saw the scene. "What's going on here?" "Just a misunderstanding, Sheriff," Victoria said. "My foster daughter got spooked by the storm and took off." Webb's eyes moved from Victoria to Caleb to the child, then to Shadow. The dog hadn't moved. His focus locked on Victoria with an intensity that made Webb's coffee grow cold in his hand. "That dog a problem?" Victoria asked, an edge creeping into her voice. "No, ma'am," Caleb said slowly, rising to his full height. "He's trained to respond to threat indicators." "Threat indicators?" Victoria's laugh was sharp. "I'm a deputy sheriff. The only threat here is a confused child in need of her guardian." "She's scared," Caleb said. "She's always scared. Trauma does that." Victoria held out her hand toward Emma. "Come on, honey. Let's go home." Emma buried her face in Caleb's pants leg. "No, no, no, no." "Emma." Victoria's tone hardened. "We talked about this. You don't run. You don't make scenes. Remember what happens when you make scenes." The child went rigid. Caleb felt it. The sudden stillness in her body, like a rabbit frozen before a hawk. "What happens?" Caleb asked quietly. Victoria's eyes flicked to him. For just a fraction of a second, something moved behind them. Something cold. Then it was gone. "She has to do extra therapy sessions. It's hard on her." Shadow barked. Once. Sharp. Aggressive. Every head in the station turned. In 5 years of service, Shadow had never barked at an officer. Never. The dog had worked alongside police units in 3 countries. He knew law enforcement. He respected uniforms. But right now his lips were pulled back, revealing teeth that could crush bone. "Control your animal," Victoria snapped. "He is controlled." Caleb's hand rested on Shadow's head. "That's what concerns me." Deputy Jake Reyes appeared from the back hallway, late 20s, dark hair perpetually disordered. He'd been on the force 3 years, but his eyes were older. The eyes of someone who'd grown up in the system. He looked at Emma. Something flickered across his features. "Deputy Hayes," Sheriff Webb said carefully. "I think we should slow down here." "Slow down?" Victoria's voice rose half an octave. "That child is in my legal custody. I have every right to take her home." "And you will," Webb said, "after we verify a few things. Protocol." "Protocol?" Victoria stepped forward. "I am Protocol Marcus. I've been on this force for 8 years. You know me." "I know you," Webb agreed. "But I also know that dog. Worked with K9 units for 30 years. They don't react like that without reason. It's just an animal." "Ma'am," Caleb said, his voice quiet but firm. "That animal has saved more lives than most people save in a lifetime, including mine, 3 times. Victoria's jaw tightened. "This is ridiculous." "Then you'll wait." Everyone turned to look at Caleb. He hadn't raised his voice. But something in his tone shifted the air in the room, the authority of a man who'd commanded soldiers in combat. "Emergency child protection protocols exist for a reason," Caleb continued. "When a child runs barefoot into a police station in an ice storm, clinging to a stranger and begging not to be taken, we don't just hand her over. We ask questions." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "You have no authority here, Marine." "No," Caleb agreed. "But I have a conscience, and right now it's screaming." Emma's small hand crept up and grabbed Caleb's fingers. He looked down. She was staring at him with an expression that hit him like a physical blow. Hope. Desperate, fragile, terrified hope. He'd seen that look once before, 10 years ago. In a bombed-out school in Afghanistan. A girl named Fatima hiding in the rubble, begging him with her eyes not to leave. He'd promised to come back for her. The IED took her 2 hours later. Caleb squeezed Emma's hand gently. "I'm not going anywhere." Sheriff Webb made the call. Social Services after-hours line. A 40-minute wait in a rural county where emergencies stacked up like firewood in winter. Victoria paced by the door, checking her phone every 30 seconds. Jake Reyes sat at his desk, pretending to work on paperwork, while his fingers moved across his keyboard, pulling records, checking databases, his jaw growing tighter with every file he opened. Caleb remained with Emma. They sat on a wooden bench near the interview rooms, Shadow lying at their feet. "Emma," Caleb said softly, "can you tell me about home?" The girl was quiet for a long moment. "It's clean," she finally said. "Clean? Everything has to be clean. In the right place. If it's not..." She trailed off. "If it's not, what happens?" Emma's eyes darted toward Victoria, then quickly away. "The closet." Caleb's blood ran cold. "What closet? The one with no light? She says bad girls need quiet time." "How long is quiet time?" Emma held up her fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 minutes. She shook her head slowly. 5 hours. A small nod. Caleb forced himself to breathe. "Emma, does she hurt you?" The girl's hand went to her bruised wrist. Instinctive. Protective. Only when I'm bad. What makes you bad? Crying, asking for food when it's not food time, making noise when she has company. Emma's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Trying to call someone. Who were you trying to call? My grandma. She said she'd come get me, but Deputy Victoria took my grandma's number away. She said Grandma doesn't want me anymore. Caleb's hands clenched. Across the room, he caught Jake Reyes's eye. The younger deputy looked pale. Sheriff, Jake said, his voice tight. Can I talk to you for a minute? Webb walked over. Jake turned his monitor slightly, keeping his voice low. Hayes has had 3 foster children in the last 2 years. All 3 transferred out. Behavioral issues cited every time. Kids in the system bounce around. That's not unusual. It is when you look at the medical records. Jake pulled up another screen. Sarah Mitchell. Age 7. 2 ER visits in 4 months. Broken finger. Then severe dehydration. Victoria said the kid refused to drink water. Jesus. Then there's David Park. Age 5. Hospitalized for malnutrition. Victoria claimed he was a picky eater. Jake's voice cracked. I was a foster kid, Sheriff. Picky eaters don't lose 15 pounds in 3 months. Webb rubbed his face with both hands. Where are these kids now? Sarah was transferred to a facility upstate, stopped speaking entirely after leaving Victoria's care. David was returned to his biological parents. They're fighting for custody. And Emma? She's been with Victoria for 7 months. No ER visits yet. Yet. Jake nodded grimly. Victoria's voice cut across the room. Are we almost done here? Emma has school tomorrow. Won't be much longer, Webb called back. But his eyes had changed. The casual skepticism was gone. Caleb leaned close to Emma. Sweetheart, I need to ask you something important. Are there other children at Deputy Victoria's house? The girl's eyes went wide. Terrified. Emma, I'm not supposed to talk about the visitors. What visitors? The ones who come at night, with the big cars. Emma's voice dropped so low, Caleb had to strain to hear. She makes me stay in my room. She locks the door from outside, but I can hear them talking. What do they talk about? Kids. They talk about kids. Emma started trembling. Names, ages, prices. Caleb went completely still. Prices. Emma, he said, keeping his voice absolutely level. Do any of those kids come to the house? Sometimes, but they don't stay long. They go away in the cars. Tears spilled down Emma's cheeks. She said if I tell anyone I'll go away too, forever. Shadow rose suddenly, every muscle tense, his head swiveling toward the front of the station. Headlights swept across the windows. A black SUV pulled into the parking lot. No sheriff's markings. Government plates. Victoria smiled for the first time. Finally, the adults have arrived. The door opened, letting in a blast of frozen air and 2 men in dark suits. FBI, the first one announced. Special Agent Morrison, this is Agent Dalton. We're taking custody of the child. Sheriff Webb stepped forward. On whose authority? Federal authority, Sheriff. The girl is part of an ongoing investigation. Deputy Hayes has been cooperating with us for months. Caleb watched Victoria's face. The smile hadn't faded. If anything, it had grown. You heard him, she said. Hand Emma over. But something felt wrong. Deeply, fundamentally wrong. Shadow felt it too. The dog was on his feet, a continuous low growl vibrating in his chest. Can I see some documentation? Webb asked. It's classified. Nothing about a child's welfare is classified in my station. Agent Morrison's expression flickered. Annoyance. Impatience. Something else. Caleb had seen that look before, in interrogation rooms overseas, on the faces of men who weren't used to being questioned. "Sheriff, I don't have time for territorial disputes. The child comes with us. Now." "No." Everyone turned to look at Caleb. He'd moved without thinking, positioned himself between Emma and the agents. "Excuse me." Morrison's voice went cold. "I said no. Not until we verify your credentials. Not until someone explains why federal agents are interested in a 6-year-old foster child in rural Kentucky. Step aside, Marine. This doesn't concern you. A child's safety always concerns me." Morrison reached toward his jacket. Shadow's growl exploded into a bark, savage and warning. "Easy," Caleb said, not to Shadow, but to Morrison. "If you're reaching for a weapon, I'd think twice." The standoff stretched for an eternity, compressed into seconds. Then a new voice cut through the tension. "Everyone stand down." A woman stepped through the door. Mid-40s. Dark hair streaked with gray. A badge on her belt that looked different from the others. "Special Agent Maya Rodriguez, FBI Crimes Against Children Unit. And these 2 men are not with my agency." Morrison's face went white. "We have identification forged." Rodriguez held up her phone. "I ran your plates when I saw you pull in. That SUV is registered to a shell company in Delaware." Victoria moved. Fast. Faster than anyone expected. She grabbed Emma's arm, yanking the child toward the back door. Shadow launched. 80 pounds of trained military dog hit Victoria's legs like a missile, taking her down before she'd made it 3 steps. His jaws locked around her forearm. Not biting, not breaking skin, but holding with immovable force. Victoria screamed. Emma screamed. Caleb scooped the girl into his arms, shielding her face against his chest. "It's okay," he murmured. "I've got you. You're safe." Morrison and Dalton tried to run. They made it 4 steps before Jake Reyes and another deputy tackled them to the ground. Sheriff Webb's voice rose above everything. "Nobody moves. This entire station is locked down." Rodriguez holstered her weapon and walked toward Caleb and Emma. "I've been tracking Victoria Hayes for 18 months, she said quietly. "She's part of a network. Foster children placed with compromised guardians, then funneled into other situations." "Trafficking." "Yes." Rodriguez's jaw tightened. "Emma was scheduled to be moved tomorrow night. If she hadn't run, if she hadn't found you..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Caleb looked down at the child in his arms. Emma had stopped crying. Her face was buried against his shoulder, one small hand gripping his jacket like she would never let go. "What happens now?" Caleb asked. "Now we take apart everything Victoria Hayes built, every contact, every transaction, every child she touched." Rodriguez paused. "And Emma? She stays safe." "I want to stay with him." Emma's voice was small, but clear. Rodriguez looked at Caleb. "You willing to be responsible for her tonight just until we can place her properly?" Caleb thought of Fatima, the girl he couldn't save, the promise he couldn't keep. "Yes," he said, "for as long as she needs." Shadow limped over, having released Victoria to the deputies now handcuffing her. The dog sat at Caleb's feet, tail wagging once. Emma reached down and touched Shadow's head. "Good dog," she whispered. Shadow's tail wagged again. Victoria glared at Caleb from where she lay on the floor. "You have no idea what you've done," she hissed. "No idea who you're dealing with." Caleb met her gaze steadily. "I'm dealing with a woman who hurt children, and I'm a man who doesn't walk away from that." He turned his back on her. Emma lifted her head from his shoulder. "Are you really going to stay?" she asked. "I'm really going to stay." "Promise." Caleb thought of all the promises he'd made in his life, the ones he'd kept, the one he'd broken. "I promise." Emma nodded slowly. Then, for the first time since she'd run through that door, she let out a breath. Long, shaky. "Okay," she said softly. "Okay." An hour later, Agent Rodriguez pulled Caleb aside. "Victoria wasn't working alone," she said. "The network is bigger than we thought. And now that Emma's talked, now that we've moved on, Victoria, they're going to know." "What does that mean?" "It means this isn't over." Rodriguez met his eyes. "It means Emma is now a target, and so are you." Caleb looked back at Emma, now wrapped in a blanket, sipping hot chocolate, while Jake Reyes sat with her. "Then I'll protect her," Caleb said simply. "You're a civilian now, retired. You don't have backup resources authority. I have shadow, I have training, and I have a promise to keep." Caleb's voice hardened. "Nobody touches that child. Not while I'm breathing." Rodriguez studied him for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. "Okay, Marine. Then let's talk about what happens next." Outside, the ice storm raged. Inside, phones rang constantly. More agents arriving. More questions being asked. But Caleb stood still, watching Emma through the glass. A Marine, a dog, and a little girl. Against the darkness. They'd won the first battle. But the war was just beginning. Rodriguez spread photographs across Sheriff Webb's desk. Faces. Names. Dates. A web of connections that made Caleb's stomach turn. "Victoria Hayes is a recruiter," Rodriguez said. "She identifies vulnerable children in the foster system. Kids with no family, no advocates, no one who'll ask questions when they disappear." Webb stared at the photos. "How long has this been going on?" "At least 5 years that we know of. Maybe longer." Rodriguez tapped one photograph. "This is Marcus Chen. He runs the operation in 3 states: Kentucky, Tennessee, West Virginia. Rural areas, small towns, places where people trust their neighbors. And Victoria, she's been placing children with him since 2019. 7 kids that we can confirm. Probably more." Caleb felt his jaw tighten. "Where are those 7 kids now?" Rodriguez didn't answer immediately. That silence said everything. "Some we've recovered. Others—" She shook her head. "The network moves fast. Once a child enters their system, tracking becomes nearly impossible." Jake Reyes stood in the corner, arms crossed, face pale. "I worked with her for 3 years. 3 years. She came to my daughter's birthday party. She brought cupcakes." "That's how they operate," Rodriguez said. "They build trust. They become part of the community. No one suspects the friendly deputy who volunteers at church fundraisers." Webb slammed his palm on the desk. "She sat in my office last month asking for a raise. I signed the paperwork myself." "You couldn't have known." "I should have known. That's my job." Caleb glanced through the window at Emma. She'd fallen asleep on the bench. Shadow curled protectively at her feet. The dog's eyes were open, watching, always watching. "What about Morrison and Dalton?" Caleb asked. "The fake agents." "Being processed now. They're not talking, but we traced their phones. Multiple calls to a number in Louisville over the past week. We're working on a warrant." "Louisville." Webb frowned. "That's Judge Harrison's district." Rodriguez's expression shifted. Something careful entered her eyes. "What?" Caleb asked. "Judge William Harrison has signed off on every foster placement Victoria requested. Every single one. No delays, no questions." The room went quiet. You're saying a judge is involved? Webb said slowly. I'm saying we need to be very careful about who we trust from this point forward. Caleb's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. Master Sergeant Stone. The voice was calm, professional, male. I understand you've inserted yourself into a situation that doesn't concern you. Caleb's blood went cold. Who is this? A friend. Someone who wants to offer you an opportunity. Walk away tonight. Take your dog. Go home. Forget what you saw. And if I don't, then things become complicated. For you, for the girl, for everyone you care about. Caleb gripped the phone tighter. Are you threatening a child? I'm offering clarity. Emma belongs to us now. She's been ours since the moment Victoria took her in. You can't change that. You can only decide how much pain you want to experience trying. Let me offer you some clarity, Caleb said, his voice dropping to something dangerous. I've spent 22 years hunting men like you. I've found them in caves, in bunkers, in places they thought no one would ever look. You think a phone call scares me? Silence on the other end. Touch that girl, Caleb continued, and I will spend every remaining breath I have making sure you regret it. The line went dead. Rodriguez was watching him. What was that? They know I'm involved. They want me to back off. Are you going to... Caleb looked at Emma sleeping, at Shadow standing guard, at the trust a terrified child had placed in a stranger. What do you think? Rodriguez almost smiled. I think they picked the wrong Marine to threaten. The next 3 hours moved fast. Federal agents arrived from Louisville. Crime scene techs descended on Victoria's house. Evidence was catalogued, photographed, sealed in plastic bags. Caleb stayed with Emma. She woke twice crying from nightmares, and both times he was there. Both times Shadow pressed close to her, warm and solid and safe. Why are you being nice to me? Emma asked during her second waking. The question broke something in Caleb's chest. Because someone should be, he said simply. Victoria said nice people always want something. She said nothing is free. Victoria was wrong about a lot of things. Emma considered this. Are you going to give me away too? No. How do I know you're telling the truth? Caleb thought for a moment. Then he unclipped the metal tag from Shadow's collar and pressed it into Emma's palm. This is Shadow's military ID. It has my name on it too. As long as you hold on to this, you'll know where to find me. And as long as you have it, I can't leave without coming back for it. Emma clutched the tag like a lifeline. What if you forget? I won't forget. Promise, I promise. She fell asleep again, the metal tag pressed against her heart. At 4 a.m, Rodriguez found Caleb in the break room, drinking coffee that tasted like motor oil. We have a problem, she said. Just one. Victoria's lawyer showed up. He's demanding her release, says we violated her civil rights. She tried to kidnap a child in front of 6 witnesses. He's claiming she panicked because armed men were threatening her foster daughter. He's spinning this as Victoria being the victim. Caleb set down his coffee. You're kidding. I wish I was. He's already filed an emergency motion. If we don't get more evidence by morning, a judge could order her released. Harrison, different judge. But Harrison's people have reach. We can't assume anyone in the local system is clean. Caleb stood. What do you need? Emma's testimony would help, but she's 6. Defense will tear apart anything she says. There has to be something else. Victoria's house, her phone records, bank accounts. We're working on it, but these people are careful. They know how to hide. Shadow appeared in the doorway, ears alert. He padded over to Rodriguez and sniffed her hand, then moved to Caleb's side. Your dog doesn't trust me, Rodriguez said. He doesn't trust anyone. That's why he's still alive. Rodriguez's phone rang. She answered, listened, and her face changed. "Say that again?" A pause. "You're sure?" Another pause. "Don't touch anything. I'm on my way." She hung up and looked at Caleb with something new in her eyes. Something that looked like hope mixed with horror. They found a room. What kind of room? Hidden. Behind Victoria's basement wall. Soundproofed. Locks on the outside. Rodriguez's voice dropped. "And names. Caleb. Names written on the walls. Dozens of them." Caleb's heart stopped. "Children. We think so. Going back years." The drive to Victoria's house took 12 minutes. Caleb left Emma at the station with Jake Reyes, who promised to guard her with his life. Shadow came along, his training too valuable to leave behind. The house looked normal from the outside. A modest ranch-style home with a well-maintained lawn. Christmas lights still hung from the gutters. A welcome mat by the front door. Inside was different. Forensic techs moved through rooms wearing gloves and grim expressions. Evidence markers dotted surfaces like yellow mushrooms. Fingerprint powder coated doorknobs and light switches. Rodriguez led Caleb to the basement. "Hidden behind a shelving unit," she explained. "One of our techs noticed the wall didn't match the house's dimensions. We found the switch behind an electrical panel. The room was small, 8 feet by 10. No windows, a single bare bulb overhead, a mattress on the floor stained and thin, a bucket in the corner, and the walls. Names, scratched into the drywall with fingernails or small objects, some faded, some fresh. Girls' names, boys' names, dates next to some of them. Sarah M., March 2021. David P., August 2021. Tommy R., December 2022. Lily B., June 2023. At least 30 names, maybe more, some too faded to read. Caleb felt his legs weaken. "How many kids?" he asked, his voice strange in his own ears. "We're cross-referencing with foster records now, but preliminary count at least 40 children passed through Victoria's care in the last 6 years. And they all came through this room." "We think so. A processing point. Keep them here until transport could be arranged." Shadow whined softly. The dog's nose worked the air, picking up scents that humans couldn't detect. Old fear, old pain. The chemical signatures of suffering embedded in the walls themselves. Caleb knelt and touched one of the names. Fresh scratches. Recent. "Emma," he read aloud. Her name was on the wall. She'd been in this room, in this darkness. Alone and terrified, scratching her name into the paint like a message in a bottle, hoping someone would find it. And she'd found him instead. "We got her out," Rodriguez said quietly. "She's safe now." "But these others weren't." Caleb's hand trembled against the wall. "These others didn't have someone to run to." "No, they didn't." Caleb stood slowly. Something had shifted inside him. Something final. "I want in," he said. "In this investigation, this network, whatever it takes to tear it down, I want in." Rodriguez studied him. "You're a civilian." "I'm a Marine. There's no such thing as former. This could take months, years. These people are connected, protected. They'll fight back." "Good." Caleb's eyes were hard now, empty of everything except purpose. "I've been fighting my whole life. Might as well fight for something that matters." Rodriguez nodded slowly. "We could use someone like you. Someone they don't have files on. Someone who operates outside their network. What do you need me to do?" "For now, keep Emma safe. She's the only witness who can identify Victoria's contacts. She heard conversations, saw faces. That makes her valuable. It also makes her a target. Yes, it does. Caleb thought of the phone call, the calm voice making threats, the certainty that they could make a child disappear. Then I'll be a bigger target, he said. Anyone who wants Emma comes through me first. His phone buzzed. Jake Reyes. Caleb. Jake's voice was tight. You need to get back here. Now. What's wrong? Someone's here. Asking for Emma. Says he's her grandfather. Caleb's blood ran cold. Blood ran. Emma's grandmother is dead. Victoria told her. He has documentation, birth certificates, court papers. Says Victoria illegally removed Emma from his custody. Rodriguez grabbed her keys. Could be legitimate. Could also be them, Caleb said, trying a different approach. They ran for the car. The drive back felt endless. Every red light an eternity. Every slow driver an obstacle between Caleb and the child he'd promised to protect. When they burst through the station doors, they found Emma backed into a corner, Shadow standing between her and a man Caleb had never seen before. The man was in his 60s, well-dressed, distinguished silver hair, kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. He held his hands up in a gesture of peace. I'm not here to hurt anyone, he said calmly. I just want to see my granddaughter. Emma was shaking, crying, pressed against the wall like she was trying to disappear into it. She doesn't seem to recognize you, Caleb said, stepping forward. The man turned. She was very young when her mother took her away. I've been searching for 3 years. That's convenient timing. I saw the news. Victoria Hayes arrested. I knew Emma was in her care. I came as fast as I could. Rodriguez was already checking the documents he'd brought. Birth certificate, custody papers, photographs. These look legitimate, she said slowly. Of course they do. Because they are. The man's voice broke slightly. Please, I've been looking for her for so long. Her mother was my daughter. She died 2 years ago. I've been fighting the system ever since. Caleb watched Emma. The girl wasn't just scared. She was terrified. More terrified than she'd been of Victoria. Emma, Caleb said gently, do you know this man? She shook her head violently. I told you she was very young, the man started. I'm not asking you. I'm asking her. Caleb knelt beside Emma. Have you ever seen him before? In pictures at Victoria's house? Emma's eyes went wide. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. He's the one, she whispered. The one what? The one who comes at night, with the big cars. The room froze. The man's kind expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes did. Something cold slithered into view. Children have such vivid imaginations, he said smoothly. The trauma she's experienced. Shadow's growl cut him off. Deep. Dangerous. The dog's hackles were fully raised, now his body lowered into an attack stance. I think you should leave, Caleb said. I have legal documentation. And I have a dog who's about to take your arm off. Caleb stood slowly, positioning himself between the man and Emma. Whatever game you're playing, it's over. Walk out that door right now or I'll let Shadow finish what he's starting. The man's mask slipped completely. Just for a second, but long enough. The kindly grandfather disappeared. In his place stood something predatory, calculating, furious. You're making a mistake, he said quietly. A very serious mistake. Wouldn't be my first? Rodriguez had her hand on her weapon. Sir, I'm going to need you to come with me for questioning. On what grounds? A child just identified you as being involved in criminal activity. A traumatized 6-year-old making accusations that won't hold up. Maybe not, but it's enough to detain you while we find out. Rodriguez nodded to Jake. Deputy Reyes, please escort this gentleman to an interview room. The man smiled. Cold. Empty. You have no idea what you're interfering with. No idea how far this reaches. You think Victoria was the end. She was nothing. A foot soldier. The people above her will never let this investigation continue. We'll see about that, Rodriguez said. As Jake led him away, the man looked back at Caleb one last time. Enjoy your time with the girl Marine. It won't last. The door closed behind him. Emma collapsed against Caleb's legs, sobbing. He scooped her up, holding her tight, while Shadow pressed against them both. You did so good, Caleb murmured. You were so brave. He's bad, Emma cried. He's the bad man. I saw him before, at Victoria's. He looked at me like I was something to buy. He's not going to touch you. Nobody is. You promise? Caleb thought about the man's smile, the certainty in his voice, the reach he'd implied. I promise, he said anyway, because some promises were worth dying to keep. Rodriguez approached her face, grim. His name is Gerald Whitmore, businessman, philanthropist, donated $2 million to children's charities last year. Perfect cover. Perfect cover, she agreed. And if Emma's right, he's not just involved, he's running the whole damn thing. Caleb looked down at the girl in his arms, 6 years old, brave beyond measure. The key to unraveling a network that had destroyed countless lives. And now the most dangerous man they'd encountered knew her face, knew her name, knew where to find her. We need to move her, Caleb said. Somewhere safe. Off the grid. Rodriguez nodded. I know a place. Safe house. 2 hours north. But Caleb... She hesitated. Once we go down this road, there's no coming back. Whitmore has connections everywhere. Police, judges, politicians. If we take him on, we take on everyone he's bought. Caleb looked at Emma, at the trust in her eyes, at the hope she'd placed in him despite everything she'd been through. Then we take them all on, he said. Outside, dawn was breaking. A new day rising over a world that suddenly seemed much darker than before. But Caleb had faced darkness before. He'd walked through it and come out the other side. This time he wouldn't be walking alone. The safe house sat 2 hours north, buried deep in the Kentucky hills where cell signals died and strangers stood out like blood on snow. Rodriguez drove. Caleb sat in the back with Emma's shadow wedged between them like a furry shield. Emma hadn't spoken since they'd left the station. She clutched Shadow's military tag in one hand and Caleb's jacket sleeve in the other. Her eyes stared at nothing. Emma, Caleb said softly. You okay? Stupid question. Of course she wasn't okay. But she looked up at him, and something in her expression shifted. The bad man knows my face now, she whispered. Yes. He's going to come for me. He's going to try. What if he finds us? Caleb met her eyes. Then he'll wish he hadn't. Rodriguez glanced in the rearview mirror. We've got company. Caleb turned. A black sedan had appeared behind them, maintaining distance but matching every turn. No plates visible. Tinted windows. How long? Picked them up 10 minutes ago. Could be coincidence. You believe that? No. Caleb's hand moved to the weapon Rodriguez had given him. Standard issue Glock. Familiar weight. Options. There's a turnoff ahead. Old logging road. If they follow us down, that we'll know for sure. Rodriguez took the turn without signaling. The sedan hesitated for just a moment, then followed. Not coincidence. Caleb said. Emma pressed closer to him. Shadow's ears flattened against his skull. Rodriguez accelerated. The road narrowed, gravel crunching beneath tires. Trees pressed in on both sides. The sedan kept pace. "I can't outrun them," Rodriguez said. "Not on this terrain." "Then don't." Caleb unbuckled his seatbelt. His mind shifted into combat mode. Assess. Plan. Execute. "Stop the car." "What?" "Stop the car. Let me handle this." Rodriguez's eyes met his in the mirror. She saw something there that made her decision. She stopped. "Stay with Emma," Caleb said. "Keep the engine running. If things go wrong, you drive. You don't stop until you reach the safe house." "Caleb, promise me." Rodriguez nodded slowly. "I promise." Caleb stepped out of the vehicle. Shadow tried to follow, but Caleb held up his hand. "Stay. Protect." The dog whined, but obeyed, positioning himself between Emma and the door. The black sedan had stopped 50 feet back. Engine idling. No movement from inside. Caleb walked toward it, slow, steady, hands visible, but ready. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out, late 30s, athletic build, the kind of physical confidence that came from professional training. He wore a suit that didn't quite hide the bulge of a shoulder holster. "Master Sergeant Stone," the man said. "Mr. Whitmore would like a word." "He can schedule an appointment." "I'm afraid that's not an option." A second man emerged from the passenger side. Similar build, similar suit, similar concealed weapon. Caleb calculated angles, distances, probabilities. "Here's how this goes," he said calmly. "You turn around. You drive away. You tell Whitmore that the girl is under federal protection. If he has concerns, he can address them through proper legal channels." The first man smiled. "That's not going to happen." "Then we have a problem." "No. You have a problem." The man's hand moved toward his jacket. "Last chance, Marine. Step aside." Caleb didn't step aside. What happened next took less than 4 seconds. The first man reached for his weapon. Caleb closed the distance before the gun cleared the holster. A strike to the throat, a twist of the wrist. The weapon discharged harmlessly into the ground as its owner collapsed, gasping for air. The second man was faster. His gun came up. Caleb was already moving. He grabbed the first man's body, used it as a shield. The shot meant for Caleb's chest hit his human barrier in the shoulder. Caleb didn't hesitate. He threw the wounded man into his partner. Both went down in a tangle of limbs. Caleb's boot found a face. A knee found ribs. In seconds, both men were on the ground, disarmed and groaning. He picked up both weapons, checked the sedan. Empty. Rodriguez had stepped out of the car, her own weapon drawn. Jesus Christ. "Get back in the vehicle. Are they alive? Won't be walking right for a while." Caleb ejected the magazines, cleared the chambers, tossed the guns into the trees. "We need to move. Now." They drove. Emma stared at Caleb with something new in her eyes. Fear, yes, but also something else. Something like awe. "You hurt them," she said quietly. "Yes." "Because they wanted to hurt me." "Yes." She was silent for a moment. Then, good. The word hit Caleb harder than he expected. 6 years old, and she'd already learned that violence could be protection. That sometimes the only thing standing between a child and evil was someone willing to do damage. He'd spent his career learning that lesson. He'd hoped she never would. "Emma," he said carefully. "What I did back there, it's not something to be happy about." "Why not?" "They were bad." "Yes. But hurting people, even bad people, it changes you. Every time you do it, you lose something. Something you can't get back. What do you lose? Caleb thought about Afghanistan, about the faces that visited him at night, about the weight he carried that never seemed to lighten. Part of yourself, he said finally. The part that believes the world is good. Emma considered this with a seriousness far beyond her years. My world was never good. Not until you. Rodriguez made a sound that might have been a sob, quickly suppressed. Caleb pulled Emma closer. She smelled like cheap soap and fear and survival. Like every refugee child he'd ever held in every broken country he'd ever served. We're going to make it better, he told her. I promise. She pressed her face against his chest. You make a lot of promises. I keep them too. The safe house was a cabin. Old but solid. Solar panels on the roof. Generator in a shed out back. Rodriguez had used it before for witnesses who needed to disappear. 2 federal marshals were already there. Sam Tucker, a grizzled veteran with 30 years of service, and Maria Santos, younger, but sharp, with the watchful eyes of someone who'd seen too much go wrong. We've got the perimeter secured, Tucker said as they arrived. Motion sensors, cameras. Anything larger than a raccoon comes within 100 yards, we'll know. Whitmore's men found us on the road, Caleb reported. 2 of them. I put them down, but there'll be more. Tucker's eyebrows rose. You put down 2 of Whitmore's people alone. I had motivation. Emma peeked out from behind Caleb's leg. Shadow stood beside her, ever watchful. Tucker's expression softened. Yeah, I can see that. They set up inside. Emma was given a small bedroom with a window facing the woods. Shadow immediately claimed a spot at the foot of her bed, refusing to move. He really loves that dog, Santos observed. The dog saved her life, Caleb said. She knows it. Rodriguez pulled Caleb aside. We need to talk about next steps. I'm listening. Whitmore was released an hour ago. His lawyers got an emergency order, claimed wrongful detention. Caleb's hands clenched. Based on what? Based on Emma being an unreliable witness. Traumatized child history of behavioral issues, documented tendency toward fabrication. Rodriguez's voice was bitter. Victoria's reports. Everything she wrote about Emma is being used to discredit her. That's insane. Victoria was part of the network. And the network is protecting its own. Every lie Victoria told is now evidence that Emma can't be trusted. Rodriguez rubbed her temples. We need more, something that doesn't depend on a child's testimony. The room, the names on the walls. Being investigated. But Whitmore's lawyers are already claiming Victoria acted alone, that he had no knowledge of what was happening. That's a lie. Of course it's a lie, but proving it is another matter. Rodriguez paused. There might be another way. I'm listening. Victoria. She's still in custody, but she's scared. Really scared. The men who came for Emma, the speed of Whitmore's response. She's starting to realize she's expendable. You think she'll turn? I think she'll do whatever it takes to survive. And right now her best chance of survival is telling us everything she knows. Caleb nodded slowly. When do we talk to her? Tonight. But Caleb... Rodriguez hesitated. You can't be there. The hell I can't. You're a civilian. You've already crossed lines that could compromise this entire case. If defense learns you were present during interrogation, I don't care about legal technicalities. I care about stopping these people. So do I, which is why you need to stay here. Protect Emma. Let me handle Victoria. Every instinct screamed at Caleb to refuse, to demand to be there, to look Victoria in the eye, to make her understand the weight of what she'd done. But Rodriguez was right. He knew she was right. "Fine," he said through gritted teeth. "But you keep me informed. Every development. Every piece of information. I want to know." "You will." Rodriguez left an hour later. The cabin settled into an uneasy quiet. Tucker took first watch. Santos prepared a simple dinner. Emma sat at the small kitchen table drawing pictures while Shadow lay at her feet. Caleb watched her work. Crayon on paper. Houses. Trees. A dog that looked like Shadow. A tall figure with broad shoulders. "Is that me?" he asked. Emma nodded without looking up. "You made me very tall." "You are tall." "I guess I am." She added more detail. A smaller figure next to the tall one. Blonde hair, blue dress. "That's you," Caleb said. "That's me." Emma set down her crayon. "I'm drawing where I want to live." "Where's that?" "Somewhere safe. With you and Shadow." She paused. "Is that stupid?" "No, sweetheart. That's not stupid at all." Victoria said wanting things was stupid. She said I should just be grateful for what I had. Victoria was wrong about most things. "Yeah." Emma picked up another crayon. Red. She added something to the picture, a heart, between the tall figure and the small one. "I never had anyone who wanted to keep me before." Caleb's chest tightened. "Emma, my mom left when I was little. My dad went to jail. Grandma got sick and couldn't take care of me anymore." She kept coloring matter-of-fact, as if reciting grocery lists instead of grief. "Every family they put me with said it was just temporary, that I wasn't theirs to keep." "What about your grandma? Do you remember her?" "A little. She had soft hands. She smelled like cookies." Emma's voice dropped. "Victoria said she died, but Victoria lied about everything else. Maybe she lied about that too." Something cold moved through Caleb. "What was your grandmother's name?" "Dorothy. Dorothy Mitchell." Caleb filed the name away. Another thread to pull. Another hope to investigate. "Emma, if your grandmother was alive, would you want to live with her?" "Yes." No hesitation. "But only if you could visit. You and Shadow." "I could visit." "Promise, I promise." The word had become a reflex, a commitment renewed with every utterance. Caleb wondered how many promises one man could carry before the weight became too much. Then he looked at Emma's drawing, at the heart she'd placed between them, and he decided he could carry as many as she needed. Tucker's voice cut through the quiet. "We've got movement." Caleb was on his feet, instantly, weapon drawn. "Where?" "East perimeter. 3 figures, moving slow." Santos had Emma on the ground behind the kitchen counter before Caleb could speak. Shadow crouched beside the girl, silent, but ready. "Could be animals," Tucker said, but his voice held no conviction. "Could be." Caleb moved to the window, staying low. "But it's not." Through the darkness, he could make out shapes, human shapes, approaching in a tactical formation. Professionals. "How did they find us?" Santos hissed. "Doesn't matter now." Caleb checked his weapon. "How many exits? Front door, back door, basement hatch." Tucker was already moving. "I'll take the back. Santos basement. You've got the front." "What about Emma?" "Bathroom, no windows, reinforced door." Tucker pointed. "Shadow stays with her. We hold until backup arrives." "How long?" 20 minutes, maybe more." An eternity in a firefight. Caleb knelt beside Emma. She was trembling, but her eyes were clear. Focused. The eyes of a child who'd learned to function through fear. I need you to go with Shadow into the bathroom, he said quietly. Lock the door. Don't come out until I tell you. Can you do that? She nodded. If something happens to me, Santos will come get you. Trust her. Nothing's going to happen to you. Probably not, but just in case. Emma grabbed his hand. You promised. I know. Caleb squeezed gently. I'm going to keep that promise. But I need you to be brave for a little longer. Can you do that for me? Yes. That's my girl. She went. Shadow followed, pressing so close to her legs that she stumbled. The bathroom door closed. The lock clicked. Caleb turned back to the window. The figures had spread out now, flanking positions. They knew the layout. They'd done reconnaissance. On my count, Tucker said through the earpiece. 3, 2, 1. The lights went out. Not the cabin lights. Every light. The security floods, the motion sensors, even the equipment LEDs. Someone had cut the power. The solar panels, the generator. Total darkness. They're in the system, Santos breathed. They knew our setup. Doesn't matter. Caleb's eyes adjusted quickly. Years of night operations. Years of fighting in places where darkness was both enemy and friend. Tucker, sit rep. Back door holding. No movement yet. Santos, basement clear. But I've got sounds. Scraping. They might be trying to come through the wall. Hold your position. A sound at the front door. Soft. Testing. Caleb raised his weapon. The door exploded inward. 2 men rushed through. Night vision goggles. Tactical gear. Suppressed weapons. Caleb fired twice. Center mass. The first man went down. The second dove for cover, returning fire. Bullets chewed into the wall beside Caleb's head. He moved. Rolling. Coming up behind the kitchen counter. Another shot. A grunt of pain. Front room clear, he reported. Back door breach. Tucker's voice was tight. 2 targets, I'm engaged. The sound of gunfire from the rear of the cabin. Controlled. Professional. Basement compromised, Santos. They're through. I need... Her transmission cut off. Caleb didn't hesitate. He ran. Through the hallway, down the basement stairs. Total darkness except for muzzle flashes. Santos was on the ground, bleeding from her shoulder but still firing. 2 men pressed toward her position. Caleb hit them from behind. No finesse, no technique, just violence delivered with precision. 2 shots, 2 bodies falling. He grabbed Santos, pulled her upright. Can you move? Yeah. Her teeth were gritted. Yeah, I'm okay. Get to Emma, now. Santos stumbled up the stairs. Caleb followed, covering her retreat. The cabin was chaos now. Smoke, dust, the sound of Tucker still fighting at the back door, the sound of more vehicles arriving outside. How many had Whitmore sent? Caleb reached the bathroom door. Knocked. Emma, it's me. Open up. The lock clicked. The door opened a crack. Shadow's nose appeared first, then Emma's pale face. We're leaving, Caleb said. Stay close to me. Don't let go of Shadow. Are the bad men here? Yes. Did you stop them? Some of them? Caleb pulled her out, keeping his body between her and any possible line of fire. More are coming. Santos had found a defensible position near the stairs. Tucker appeared moments later, blood on his face but moving strong. We can't hold this, Tucker said. Too many. Extraction. 7 minutes out. An eternity. Caleb looked at Emma, at Shadow, at the 2 wounded marshals who'd volunteered to protect a child they'd never met. "Then we hold for 7 minutes," he said. Tucker almost smiled. "Ura Marine, Ura." They held. 7 minutes of hell, 7 minutes of controlled chaos, 7 minutes of bullets and blood and desperate defense. When the extraction helicopter finally appeared cutting through the darkness with spotlight blazing, Caleb was carrying Emma in one arm and firing with the other. Shadow limped beside them, wounded in the flank, but refusing to leave his position. They made it to the helicopter. Tucker, Santos, Emma, Shadow, Caleb. As they lifted off, Caleb looked down at the cabin, at the bodies, at the smoking ruins of what was supposed to be safety. Whitmore had found them, had sent an army to claim one little girl. The helicopter banked north, toward another safe house, another temporary refuge. Emma pressed against Caleb's chest, crying silently. Shadow whimpered beside them. Santos was applying pressure to her wound, while Tucker called in the situation. "This isn't over." Rodriguez's voice crackled through the radio. Victoria talked. She gave us everything. Names, dates, account numbers. We've got enough to take down the whole network. "Whitmore. Arrest warrant issued 20 minutes ago. FBI's moving on him now." Caleb closed his eyes. Exhaustion crashed over him like a wave. "It's over, Emma," he whispered. "It's finally over." She looked up at him with those blue eyes, wet with tears but bright with something else. Hope. Real hope. "You kept your promise," she said. "I always will." Below them, the sun was starting to rise. A new day breaking over a world that was just a little bit better than it had been. Not perfect, not safe, but better. And sometimes that was enough. The federal courthouse in Louisville buzzed with reporters' cameras and the electric anticipation of a trial that had captured the nation's attention. Caleb stood outside the building. Emma's hand clasped firmly in his. Shadow sat at their feet, wearing an official service vest that Rodriguez had arranged. 3 weeks had passed since the helicopter extraction. 3 weeks of depositions, evidence review, and preparation. 3 weeks of Emma slowly learning to sleep without nightmares. "I'm scared," Emma whispered. "I know," Caleb said, "but you don't have to do anything except tell the truth. Can you do that?" "What if they don't believe me?" "They'll believe you." "How do you know?" Caleb knelt beside her, meeting her eyes. "Because the truth has a sound, Emma. People can hear it. And your truth is louder than all their lies." Rodriguez approached her, expression tight. "We have a problem." "Of course we do." Whitmore's lawyers filed a motion this morning. They're challenging Emma's competency to testify, claiming she's been coached, that her testimony is the product of suggestion rather than memory. Caleb's jaw tightened. "That's ridiculous." "It's a delay tactic, but the judge is considering it. We might have to undergo a psychological evaluation before she can take the stand." "How long?" "Days, maybe weeks." Emma looked up at Caleb. "What does that mean?" "It means some people are trying to stop you from telling your story." "Why?" "Because your story will put them in prison." Emma's small hand squeezed his. "Then I have to tell it." The courtroom was packed. Caleb sat in the front row directly behind the prosecution's table. Emma was in a side room with a child advocate waiting to be called. Shadow had been granted special permission to remain with her. Gerald Whitmore sat at the defense table, impeccable, in a charcoal suit, silver hair perfectly styled. He looked like someone's beloved grandfather. He looked innocent. That was the most terrifying part. The judge entered. Honorable Margaret Chen. mid-60s, a reputation for fairness that had survived 3 decades on the bench. "Before we begin," Judge Chen said, "I've reviewed the defense motion regarding the minor witness. I'm denying it." Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. "Your Honor," Whitmore's lead attorney started, "I've reviewed the child's statements, Mr. Patterson. I've reviewed the forensic interviews. I've seen nothing to suggest coaching or manipulation. The witness will testify." Patterson's face reddened, but he sat down. Whitmore's expression didn't change. That practiced calm. That unshakable composure. But Caleb caught something in his eyes. A flicker. The first crack in the armor. The prosecution called their witnesses. Rodriguez testified about the investigation, about Victoria Hayes, about the hidden room, about the names on the walls. Tucker and Santos testified about the safe house attack, about the men who'd come for Emma, about the lengths Whitmore's network had gone to silence a 6-year-old girl. Forensic accountants testified about shell companies, money transfers, payments that traced directly to Whitmore's personal accounts. And then they called Emma. She walked into the courtroom holding Shadow's leash. The dog moved beside her with steady calm, his presence an anchor in a sea of adult faces and overwhelming attention. Caleb's chest tightened as she passed. She looked so small, so vulnerable. But her chin was up. Her steps were steady. She climbed into the witness chair. A microphone was adjusted to her height. Judge Chen leaned forward slightly. "Hello, Emma. Do you know why you're here today?" "Yes, ma'am." Emma's voice was clear, stronger than Caleb had expected. "To tell the truth about what happened to me." "That's right. Do you understand what it means to tell the truth?" "It means saying what really happened, not making things up." "And do you promise to tell us the truth today?" "Yes, ma'am. I promise." The prosecutor, a woman named Sarah Martinez, approached gently. "Emma, can you tell us about Deputy Victoria Hayes?" Emma's hands tightened on Shadow's leash. The dog pressed closer to her legs. "She was my foster mother." "How long did you live with her?" 7 months. "Can you tell us what it was like living with Deputy Hayes?" Emma was quiet for a moment. The courtroom held its breath. "At first it was okay. She smiled a lot. She bought me new clothes." Emma's voice dropped. "But then she changed." "Changed how?" "She got angry, really angry, about little things. If I made noise, if I moved something, if I cried." "What happened when she got angry?" "She put me in the closet." "What closet?" "The one in the basement, the one with no light." Emma's voice trembled, but held. She said bad girls needed quiet time, to think about what they did wrong. "How long would she leave you there?" "Hours, sometimes all night." A woman in the gallery started crying softly. Caleb recognized her from the news. Sarah Mitchell's mother, one of Victoria's previous victims. "Emma," Martinez continued carefully, "did Deputy Hayes ever hurt you physically?" Emma pulled up her sleeve. The bruises had faded, but faint yellow marks still traced her wrist. "When I tried to run, when I tried to call my grandma." "Did anyone else ever come to Deputy Hayes's house?" "Yes." "Can you tell us about those people?" Emma's eyes moved across the courtroom. "Found Whitmore, held there." "He came." "Who came, Emma?" "That man." She pointed directly at Whitmore. "He came at night, in big cars. He looked at me like—" She struggled for words. "Like I was something to buy." The courtroom erupted. Judge Chen gavelled for order. Whitmore's attorney shot to his feet, objecting furiously. "She's been coached. This is clearly, Mr. Patterson, sit down." Judge Chen's voice cracked like a whip. The witness will continue. Emma hadn't flinched. Her eyes stayed locked on Whitmore. He talked about prices, she said. I heard him, through the door. He talked about kids, about how much they cost, about where they would go. Did you ever hear him mention specific names? Sarah. He said Sarah was good, that she went for a lot. Emma's voice cracked. And he talked about me. He said I was special, that someone important wanted me. Martinez let the words hang in the air. Emma, is there anything else you remember about that night, about Mr. Whitmore's visits? He saw me once. I was supposed to be in my room, but I had to use the bathroom. He was in the hallway. Emma shuddered. He smiled at me. He said soon I'd have a new home, a special home. He said I should be excited. Were you excited? No. Tears spilled down Emma's cheeks. I was scared. I've never been so scared. Shadow whined and pressed his head against her leg. Emma's hand found his fur, gripping tight. Thank you, Emma. Martinez turned to the judge. No further questions. Patterson rose slowly. His approach was careful, calculated. The predator circling prey. Emma, you've been through a lot, haven't you? Yes, sir. And you've talked to a lot of people about what happened. Police, lawyers, social workers. Yes, sir. Did any of them ever suggest what you should say, what you should remember? No, sir. Are you sure? Because sometimes adults can accidentally influence children without meaning to. Martinez stood. Objection. Counsel is testifying. Withdrawn. Patterson shifted tactics. Emma, you mentioned seeing my client in Deputy Hayes's house, but it was dark, wasn't it, nighttime? Yes. And you were supposed to be in your room, so you only saw him briefly in a hallway? Yes. Could you have been mistaken? Could it have been someone else? Emma shook her head firmly. It was him. How can you be so sure? Because I remember his eyes. Emma's voice steadied. They were cold. Like there was nothing behind them. I've never seen eyes like that before. She pointed at Whitmore again. Except his. His eyes are exactly the same. Patterson faltered, just for a moment, but everyone saw it. No further questions. Emma climbed down from the witness chair. She walked past the defense table, past Whitmore, without looking at him. Shadow stayed pressed against her side. But as she passed, Whitmore spoke. Quietly. So quietly that only Emma and Caleb, straining to hear, caught the words. This isn't over, little girl. Emma stopped. Turned. Looked directly at the man who had terrorized her trafficked children, destroyed innocent lives. Yes, it is, she said clearly. You're going to prison. And you're never going to hurt anyone again. The courtroom went silent. Judge Chen's gavel cracked. We'll take a 30-minute recess. Caleb met Emma in the side room. She ran to him, burying her face in his chest. You did it, he said, holding her tight. You were so brave. He said it isn't over. He's lying, like he's always lied. What if he gets away with it? Caleb pulled back, meeting her eyes. He won't, I promise. The trial continued for another week. More witnesses, more evidence, more damning testimony from Victoria Hayes, who had traded everything she knew for a reduced sentence. But it was Emma's testimony that broke the case open. Emma's words that echoed through news broadcasts and newspaper headlines. Emma's courage that inspired other victims to come forward. By the time the jury retired to deliberate, 17 additional witnesses had testified. 14 more children had been identified and rescued from the network. 3 other perpetrators had been arrested. The deliberation took 4 hours. Guilty. on all counts. When the verdict was read, Whitmore finally cracked. His composure shattered. He lunged toward the prosecution table, screaming threats and denials. Bailiffs tackled him to the ground. His perfect silver hair fell across his face as he fought and cursed. Emma watched from the gallery, clutched against Caleb's side. She didn't flinch, didn't cry. "He looks small now," she said quietly. "He looked so big before, but he's small." "Evil always looks smaller when it's exposed," Caleb said. Judge Chen restored order. Whitmore was dragged from the courtroom, still screaming. "Sentencing will be scheduled for next month," she announced. "But I want to say something for the record." The courtroom fell silent. In 30 years on this bench, I have seen the worst of humanity. I have seen cruelty that defies comprehension. But I have also seen courage. Her eyes found Emma. I have seen a 6-year-old girl stand in this courtroom and speak truth to power. I have seen her face her abuser and refuse to be silenced. Judge Chen's voice caught slightly. That kind of courage gives me hope for our world. It reminds me why justice matters. She gathered herself. Court is adjourned. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Cameras flashed. Questions flew from every direction. Rodriguez ran interference while Caleb carried Emma through the crowd. Shadow cleared a path, his presence commanding respect even from aggressive journalists. They made it to a waiting SUV. The door closed. The noise faded. Emma leaned against Caleb's shoulder. "Is it really over now?" "The trial is over. Whitmore is going to prison for the rest of his life." "What about me?" Caleb's chest tightened. This was the question he'd been dreading, the question he didn't have an answer for. "The social workers are working on finding you a permanent placement." "I don't want a placement." Emma's voice was small. "I want to stay with you." "Emma, you promised. You said you'd stay." "I know, and I'm not going anywhere, but—" he struggled for words. "There are rules, laws, about who can take care of children." "Rules are stupid." "Sometimes they are." Rodriguez climbed into the driver's seat. She met Caleb's eyes in the rearview mirror. "There might be another option," she said. "What option?" "During the investigation, we tracked down Emma's grandmother, Dorothy Mitchell." Emma jerked upright. "Grandma Dorothy Victoria said she was dead." "Victoria lied. Your grandmother is alive. She's been searching for you for 2 years." Tears streamed down Emma's face. "Where is she? Can I see her?" Rodriguez smiled. "She's waiting at the field office. She flew in this morning." The SUV pulled away from the courthouse. Emma bounced with barely contained excitement, peppering Rodriguez with questions. Shadow watched her with something that looked almost like contentment. Caleb sat quietly processing. Relief and loss tangled together in his chest. Dorothy Mitchell was alive. Emma had family. Real family. A grandmother who loved her, who had never stopped looking. This was good news. The best news. So why did it feel like losing something precious? The field office lobby was empty except for an elderly woman sitting in a plastic chair, clutching a worn photograph. Her hair was white, her face lined with age and worry. But her eyes were Emma's eyes. The same brilliant blue. Emma stopped in the doorway. Dorothy looked up. The photograph slipped from her fingers. "Emma?" Her voice cracked. "My sweet girl. Grandma." They ran to each other. Dorothy swept Emma into her arms, sobbing openly. Emma clung to her grandmother with the desperate grip of a child who had finally found home. "I looked for you," Dorothy gasped between tears. Every day. They said I couldn't have you. They said I was too old, too sick. But I never stopped looking. I knew you didn't forget me, Emma cried. I knew Victoria was lying. Caleb stood back, watching the reunion. Shadow pressed against his leg, whining softly. After several minutes, Emma pulled back from her grandmother's embrace. She looked around, found Caleb. Grandma, this is Caleb. He saved me. Dorothy's watery eyes met his. She crossed the room slowly, her steps unsteady but determined. You're the Marine? Yes, ma'am. The one who stood between my granddaughter and those monsters. I did what anyone would do. Dorothy shook her head. No. Most people would have walked away, would have said it wasn't their business. She took his hands in hers. Her grip was surprisingly strong. You gave me back my grandchild. I don't have words for what that means. You don't need words. Just take care of her. I will. For whatever time I have left, I will. Dorothy hesitated. But I need to ask you something. Anything. Emma talks about you constantly, about Shadow, about the promises you made. Dorothy's voice dropped. She's lost so much. So many people who were supposed to stay. I'm 74 years old. I won't live forever. She squeezed his hands. Will you be there for her when I can't be anymore? Caleb looked at Emma, who was watching them with anxious eyes. At Shadow, who had crossed the room to sit at the girl's feet. Yes, he said. I will. Emma ran to him, then wrapping her arms around his waist. You're not leaving, she asked. I'm not leaving. Even though I have Grandma now, even though. Caleb knelt to her level. Family stories aren't always blood, Emma. Sometimes they're the people who show up, who stay, who fight for you when no one else will. Is that what we are, family? Caleb pulled her close. Over her shoulder, he saw Dorothy nodding, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. Saw Rodriguez wiping her own eyes in the corner. Saw Shadow's tail wagging slowly. Yeah, he said. That's what we are. 6 months felt like a lifetime and a heartbeat all at once. Caleb pulled his truck into Dorothy Mitchell's driveway, gravel crunching beneath the tires. Shadow sat in the passenger seat, nose pressed against the window tail, already wagging. The front door flew open before Caleb could cut the engine. Caleb, Shadow. Emma sprinted across the lawn, blonde hair streaming behind her. She'd grown at least 2 inches since he'd last visited. Her cheeks were fuller, her eyes brighter. She looked like a child who had finally learned what safety felt like. Shadow leaped from the truck, meeting Emma halfway. They collided in a tumble of fur and laughter rolling across the grass while the dog covered her face with kisses. Okay, Emma giggled, pushing him away. I missed you too. Caleb walked over, his heart full in ways he still struggled to name. Hey, kiddo. Emma jumped up and threw her arms around him. You came. I said I would. I know, but grown-ups say lots of things. She pulled back, studying his face. You look tired. Long drive. Grandma made pie, apple, your favorite. She remembered. I reminded her. Emma grabbed his hand, tugging him toward the house. Come on. She's been cooking all day. She's so excited she can barely sit still. Dorothy stood in the doorway, wiping her hands on a flour-dusted apron. Her white hair was pinned back, her face creased with a smile that hadn't faded since Emma came home. Master Sergeant Stone. Ma'am, I've told you 100 times. It's just Caleb. And I've told you, young man, that anyone who saves my granddaughter earns a title of respect. Dorothy pulled him into a hug. Her arms were thin, but her grip was strong. Thank you for coming. Wouldn't miss it. Emma bounced between them. Can I show him my room now? Please, I painted a mural. Shadows in it. After dinner, Dorothy said firmly. Set the table first. Yes, ma'am. Emma disappeared into the house shadow on her heels. Dorothy watched her go, something soft and sad moving across her features. She has nightmares less, she said quietly. Only once or twice a week now instead of every night. That's progress. She still sleeps with every light on, still checks that the doors are unlocked. Dorothy's voice caught. She's healing, but some wounds, they leave scars. Caleb nodded. He knew about scars. Carried plenty of his own. How are you holding up? He asked. I'm 74 years old raising a traumatized 6-year-old. Dorothy laughed softly. Most days I'm exhausted before breakfast. But then she smiles, or she laughs at something silly, and I remember why I fought so hard to get her back. You're good for her. She's good for me. Gives an old woman a reason to keep going. Dorothy squeezed his arm. Now come inside. The pie's getting cold. Dinner was simple. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans from Dorothy's garden. Emma talked constantly, filling Caleb in on every detail of her new life. She had a best friend now, a girl named Maya from down the road. They rode bikes together and played in the creek behind Maya's house. She'd started 2nd grade. Her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, said she was the best reader in the class. She had a goldfish named Sargent. After Caleb. Because he's tough and orange, Emma explained seriously. Like you. I'm not orange. Your hair kind of is, when the sun hits it. Dorothy hid a smile behind her napkin. After dinner, Emma dragged Caleb upstairs to see her room. The mural covered one entire wall, a sprawling, colorful scene painted with the uneven enthusiasm of a child who'd never had art supplies before. There was a house with smoke curling from the chimney, a garden full of flowers, mountains in the background, a sun with rays stretching to every corner, and in the center, 3 figures. A tall man with reddish hair, an old woman with white curls, a small girl in a blue dress. Between them stood a dog, brown and black ears, alert tail raised. That's us, Emma said proudly. Our family. Caleb's throat tightened. It's beautiful. I'm going to add more. Maya says she'll help me paint her horse next. Emma climbed onto her bed, pulling Shadow up beside her. Caleb, yeah, are you staying this time for longer? He'd been thinking about that question for weeks, turning it over in his mind during sleepless nights and long drives. What if I said I was thinking about moving closer? Emma's eyes went wide. Really like living here. Not in this house, but in town. Close enough to visit whenever you want. For real. For real. Emma launched herself at him, nearly knocking him over. Yes, 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 Shadow barked, caught up in the excitement tail wagging furiously. Dorothy appeared in the doorway, having heard the commotion. What's all this? Caleb's moving here. He's going to live in town. Dorothy's hand went to her chest. Is this true? Caleb nodded. I found a place. Small house about 2 miles down the road. The owner's willing to rent to a retired Marine and his dog. But your life, your career, everything you built, none of it means anything if the people I care about aren't in it. Caleb met her eyes. I made a promise. I intend to keep it. Dorothy crossed the room slowly. Her hand found his clasping tight. You're a good man, Caleb Stone. I'm trying to be. That night, Caleb sat on the porch swing shadow at his feet, watching stars emerge in a sky unpolluted by city lights. Dorothy joined him 2 cups of coffee in her weathered hands. She asked about you every day, she said, settling beside him. Every single day since you left. When is Caleb coming? Is Caleb okay? Will Caleb forget about us? I'd never forget. I know, but she's still learning to trust that. Dorothy sipped her coffee. She's come so far, but there are moments I see her looking out the window with that expression, the one that expects danger, expects disappointment. That'll take time. Time I may not have much of. Dorothy's voice dropped. I had a doctor's appointment last month. My heart isn't what it used to be. Caleb went still. How bad? Bad enough that I've started thinking about what happens after. She turned to face him. Emma needs stability. Permanence. She needs to know that when I'm gone, she won't be alone. She won't be. I know. That's why I need to ask you something. Something important. Caleb waited. I want to name you as Emma's legal guardian, in my will. If anything happens to me, you'll be the one who takes care of her. The words hung in the air, weighted with everything they implied. Dorothy, I'm not asking you to decide tonight. Think about it. But know that there's no one else I'd trust with my granddaughter's future. Her eyes glistened in the starlight. You've already proven you'd die for her. I'm asking if you're willing to live for her too. Caleb looked up at the window where Emma's light still glowed. He thought about the road that had led him here. About a barefoot girl in a police station clinging to his leg, begging him not to let her go. About all the promises he'd made, and the one promise he'd broken long ago that still haunted his dreams. I don't need to think about it, he said. The answer is yes. Dorothy exhaled slowly, relief flooding her features. Thank you. Don't thank me. It's not a favor. It's... He searched for the right word. It's where I belong. They sat in comfortable silence, the swing creaking softly, Shadow snoring at their feet. She calls you Dad sometimes, Dorothy said suddenly. In her sleep, during nightmares, she calls for you. Caleb's heart stopped. I didn't know if I should tell you, but I thought... Dorothy squeezed his hand. I thought you should know what you mean to her. He couldn't speak, couldn't find words for the emotions crashing through him. A father. He'd never been one. Never thought he would be. His life had been duty and service and sacrifice with no room for family. But somehow, without planning or expecting it, family had found him anyway. I'll take care of her, he managed finally. Whatever happens, as long as I'm breathing. I know you will. Dorothy smiled. That's why I can rest easy. 3 months later, Caleb's new house was finally furnished. Nothing fancy. A small cabin on 2 acres with a fenced yard for Shadow and a spare bedroom that Emma had already claimed for sleepovers. The housewarming party was small. Dorothy, Emma, Rodriguez, who'd driven 4 hours to attend, Jake Reyes, who'd transferred to the local department and never looked back. Tucker and Santos sent their regards from a new assignment. Their scars had healed, but they still called Emma their little hero. The network had been dismantled, 47 arrests across 3 states, 31 children recovered. Legislation passed, bearing Emma's name, strengthening protections for foster children. Victoria Hayes was serving 25 years. She'd attempted suicide twice in prison. Both times other inmates had stopped her. They have kids too, Rodriguez had explained grimly. Predators don't last long behind bars. Gerald Whitmore had died 3 weeks into his sentence. Heart attack officially. But rumors swirled about what really happened when a child trafficker entered general population. Caleb didn't lose sleep over it. Emma stood in the backyard throwing a ball for Shadow, who chased it with puppyish enthusiasm despite his advancing years. She's happy, Rodriguez said, watching from the porch. Getting there? You did this, you know. Not just saved her life. You gave her a future. She gave me one too. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. Before her, I was just existing, going through motions, waiting for something that gave life meaning. Caleb shook his head. She showed up barefoot in a snowstorm and gave me a reason to keep fighting. Sounds like you saved each other. Maybe that's how it works. Maybe broken people find each other for a reason. Emma ran over Shadow, panting behind her. Caleb, Grandma says it's time to cut the cake. Then we better get inside. Emma grabbed his hand, tugging him toward the door, but halfway there she stopped. Caleb. Yeah. Can I ask you something? Always. She bit her lip, suddenly nervous. Would it be okay if sometimes I called you? She couldn't finish the sentence. Caleb's heart swelled. He knelt to her level, taking both her hands in his. Emma Mitchell, you can call me whatever feels right, because no matter what word you use, you're my family, now and forever. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Dad, the word broke something open inside him, something that had been locked away for years, decades maybe. Yeah, sweetheart, I love you, Dad. He pulled her into his arms, holding tight, not trusting his voice. I love you too, Emma. More than anything. Dorothy appeared in the doorway, wiping her eyes. Rodriguez pretended to study the trees. Even Shadow sat quietly, as if understanding the weight of the moment. Finally, Emma pulled back, smiling through her tears. Okay. Cake now. Caleb laughed, rough and watery. Cake now. They walked inside together, father and daughter, Marine and child. Two people who had found each other in the darkest possible circumstances and somehow built something beautiful from the wreckage. The cake had a clumsy decoration on top. A dog, a man, a girl, all made from frosting and love. I helped Grandma make it, Emma announced proudly. It's perfect. Later that night, after the guests had left, and Dorothy had fallen asleep in the spare room, Caleb tucked Emma into bed in her designated sleepover corner. Shadow claimed his spot at her feet, settling with a contented sigh. Dad. Emma's voice was drowsy, eyes already half closed. Yeah. Remember when I ran into that police station, when I grabbed your leg and said, she's coming? I remember. I was so scared. I thought nobody would help me. I thought nobody cared. I know. But then you were there, and Shadow, and you didn't let me go. She yawned. That was the bravest thing. Not fighting the bad guys, just standing there, refusing to let me go. Caleb smoothed her hair back from her forehead. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't fighting. It's staying. That's what you did. You stayed. I always will. Emma's eyes closed. Her breathing slowed. Her hand found Shadow's fur, holding on even in sleep. Caleb watched her for a long moment. Then he bent and kissed her forehead. Good night, sweetheart. He walked to the window. The stars were out again, bright and countless above the Kentucky hills. He thought about the road that had led him here, the battles, the losses, the girl in Afghanistan he couldn't save. Maybe he realized that's why he'd been given another chance. Maybe every life he couldn't protect had prepared him for this one. The one he could. Emma stirred in her sleep, murmuring something unintelligible. Shadow lifted his head, checked on her, then settled back down. A Marine, a dog, a little girl. Once they had been strangers. Now they were family. Sometimes miracles don't arrive as thunder or light from the sky. Sometimes they come quietly through a child who runs to you in a snowstorm. Through a moment when someone listens instead of looking away. Through a heart that still remembers how to protect. God doesn't always send angels with wings. Sometimes he sends them in ordinary forms. A steady hand. A loyal dog. A person who stands in the right place at the right time and refuses to move. Caleb turned from the window. He checked the locks one final time. Not because he expected danger, but because some habits die hard. Then he settled into the armchair beside Emma's bed, Shadow lifting his head briefly before closing his eyes again. He would stay here tonight. Just in case, because that's what fathers do. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees. Stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns. And somewhere in the quiet darkness, a little girl dreamed of sunshine and safety and a future that no one could take away. She had earned that future with her courage. And the man who loved her would spend every remaining day making sure she kept it. Not because of duty, not because of honor, but because some promises are sacred, some bonds are unbreakable, and some families are forged not by blood, but by the choice to stand together when standing alone would be so much easier. Emma Mitchell had found her father in a snowstorm. Caleb Stone had found his purpose in a frightened child's eyes, and Shadow, loyal to the end, had found exactly where he belonged. 3 broken souls mended by love. That was enough. That was everything. If this story moved you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to our channel for more stories of courage, faith, and the unbreakable bonds that make us human. And remember, sometimes the greatest heroes aren't the ones who charge into battle. They're the ones who simply refuse to let go. God bless you and your loved ones. May you always find the courage to stay when it matters most.